the evening. So thank you everyone for being here tonight. It's really exciting to see so many people, so many faces. I really am interested to see everyone in their own habitat on Zoom. It's always interesting to see the various environments that we call home these days and we call our offices. So I'll be the first one to thank Matt, Opal, Morrell, and Jason. Craig will thank everyone and introduce everyone in a minute. But I wanted to point out that these kinds of conversations are fantastic because it really shows the amazing array of talent and insights that we have amongst our alumni. So this is the tip of the iceberg. And also the Alumni Center is the connection between our alumni, old and young, and call us to see where we can make connections and help you to on potential job interviews, or we can help you connect with people who you'd like to reach out to. So we do have 4 decades, that's 40 years for you people who are younger, represented on this phone call. And unfortunately, Matt McLaughlin, I think you and I are the elder statesmen in this bunch. So that means you're old and I'm really old. So welcome everyone. So I'm going to turn it back to Craig to explain some of the ground rules and what's going to happen and transpire. But again, thank you everyone for coming tonight. I really appreciate your interest in Molloy and keeping on building a wonderful Stanner community. So thank you once again.
You got it. Thank you, Richard. Just to let you know, Rob Pasquale would like to let you know that the 70s are well represented here as well. So you are actually not the elder statesman, I think.
All right, 5 decades.
Yeah. So I just want to thank again everybody for participating. Just to share with you, all of you that registered, we appreciate those that submitted questions for the panelists. What was great is we looked at those questions prior to this event. And what we tried to do is break it down into 4 areas, because a lot of the questions, while some were very specific, a lot of them had a very similar type of framing of a question. So we broke it into 4 areas: how to prepare, how to network and market yourself, and how to avoid common pitfalls in an interview, and then how to follow up after the interview. So following the panelist discussion, there'll be time for some question and answers for participants on the call. What we're going to ask everyone to do is please stay muted until there are appropriate times to unmute for discussion. We would like to minimize any distractions and ambient noises for all. So as Richard introduced our panelists, I'd like to give you a little bit more detail about them. First, I'd like to introduce Opal Vadhan, class of 2011, who's currently the executive assistant to Hillary Rodham Clinton. Prior to that, she was on the national advance team for Hillary for America. She graduated from Pace University in 2015 and was recently named Pace University's 30 Under 30. So welcome, Opal. Morrell Gaskins, class of 2012, is currently the Associate Director of Recruiting at COOP Careers, a nonprofit organization whose mission overcoming underemployment in underrepresented demographics through digital skills and peer connections. Morrell, thank you so much for being here. I'd like to say just a little slight, maybe I inspired Morrell to go in the nonprofit sector just a little bit. Jason McGann is class of 96, is the Managing Director at PineBridge Investment Private Funds Group. Jason is a member of the team's management committee with responsibility for formulating investment themes, directing business development, leading portfolio construction, due diligence, developing bespoke investment solutions, and business unit financial planning, among the many hats that Jason wears. I also, last but not least, Matthew McLaughlin, class of 87, is the partner in charge of the New York office for Venable LLP, a national law firm. He was the hiring partner at Venable for 7 years. Mr. McLaughlin has been practicing corporate and commercial litigation for 25 years. So with that, I would like to segue over to Matthew. Matthew, you're going to lead us into the dialogue about how to prepare. In your experience in interviewing numerous individuals for various roles, can you please take us through some best practices?
Thanks, Craig. Thanks for everyone. Thanks for all these Stanners being on the call. It's a pleasure to be able to see all these names and faces, including another class of '87 classmate of mine, Ken McLaughlin. So it's good to see that there's a few old timers, including some of those folks from the '70s on. As Craig said, I was the hiring partner at my law firm for about 7 or 8 years, and in running the office now, I still have a lot of role, pretty significant role in hiring. And I think that we all know, from looking at the screens that we're on now, there's a new medium of connection, and it's a very new, weird world for all of us, young and old, to have to project our personalities through a two-dimensional screen in an interview. It ain't the way it used to be with walking in and shaking a hand. It's a new kind of medium altogether. The good thing is everyone's in the same exact boat. It's not like you're stuck at home and you have to be on camera where other folks are competing against you and they're in the flesh. No, everybody's in the same uniform. It's raining on everybody equally these days. So you have to sort of play in the new game with the new set of foul lines. So we're going to run through I'm going to spend a couple of minutes on preparing for a Zoom interview, basically. First things first, test your technology before the interview. You want to ensure that the microphone works. You want to make sure that the camera is working. You also want to check your internet connection. Those of you who are on Zoom calls all day long know that there's folks who have a good modem and those folks that have a crappy second-rate modem that can't get all the data through the portal fast enough. You want to probably do a dry run with a mock interview with your brother, sister, friend, mother, father, somebody. It would be good just to do a practice run, even if it's not a real interview, just a conversation of sorts, so you can check your technology, and also so that you get more acclimated to the awkwardness of a Zoom call. It's weird to be looking at a screen and talking into it, knowing that there's someone or some people on the other side. But I think we're all getting used to that anyway. Consider whether you want to have a false background. I think everybody on this call probably knows that Zoom offers fake backgrounds for you. You want to minimize distractions from that the interviewer experiences. You want to make sure your lighting is fairly decent. You want to make sure that you're avoiding interference from family and pets and whatever might be flying by. As you know, you're looking for a job and trying to put on the most professional face possible, and you can't control what your 6-year-old cousin's going to do, and you can't control what your pet boa constrictor is going to do. So you might consider having a faux background, or just make sure you control the clutter behind yourself so that's not too distracting. I've got a lot of clutter back here, which is probably distracting enough, but fortunately, I already have a job. Dress. Morrell and I were talking about dress in a warm-up call about a week ago, and there's really no good answer to this one. And Morrell's suggestion, I think, someone on the warm-up call said, and this is the best piece of advice I've heard in a while, look at the website of the prospective employer to figure out what you should wear on the call. Some, like Jason McGann's wearing a tie, Rich Karsten's wearing a tie, other folks may be wearing a tie. I'm not. You have to look at the website of the company you're interviewing at to discern what you should wear and look like folks on the website do. That said, I also think it's better to dress up. I think unless you're interviewing for the kind of position where it would be totally inappropriate or uncool to have a tie on, I think there's nothing wrong with a jacket and tie. I think there's nothing wrong with looking like Rich Karsten does now. I think you want to dress for the job you're looking for, and we're all looking for better jobs and we're all looking onwards and upwards. So I think there's nothing wrong with a jacket and tie. But then again, I am a fuddy-duddy from a law firm, so my predilection is probably somewhat skewed. It's a judgment call. It's an opportunity for you to show judgment, by the way, in deciding what to wear. If you go in dressed like Batman, you ain't getting that interview, unless of course it's a costume party of some sort. Okay, further in preparation, thoroughly know your resume. I'm stunned at the number of people who come in for interviews and get blindsided by a question about some element on their resume. What did you do from the spring of 2002 to the fall of 2004? And you get, a sort of stunned silence. every single line in your resume is a potential question that could be directed at you. So you have to know every single point in your resume. It's your story. It's a visual distillation of your story. So you should understand how each segment of your resume fits in some kind of overall story of, you know, where you've been and where you are now and where you want to go and why you think you should go with the company you're interviewing at. So I'm always shocked at how many people forget to do this, but really know your resume. On the issue of your story, you have a half an hour or so to project who you are. You show energy, show some of that Queen's grit that we all have, having gone to the best high school in the city. Show some of that Queen's grit and that self-possession that we all learned in our 4 years at the school. Show pizzazz, show a little intellectual curiosity. You have half an hour to project your selfness through that screen. Let them see who you are. Don't go in like some of the younger folks who are looking for jobs come in. Don't go in expecting it to be a Q&A session. Don't expect it to be an interrogation. It's a dialogue. And by the way, if there's only one thing that you write down or walk away with from my portion of this, remember that this is a dialogue. It's not an interrogation with you being asked a question and giving the right answer. It's a back and forth that is a two-way discussion wherein you get to show that you're pleasant, smart, affable, have that Queen's grit that sells so well, I think. And more ways to do that, more ways to sort of project the right impression is to, next point, thoroughly research the target employer. Another thing that baffles me when I do interviews, people come in either too forgetful or lazy or whatever it is and forget to study my law firm or forget to study, you know, who I am. Go spend a good amount of time on the prospective employer's website. Look at every pull-down menu that you can access. During the interview, have notes in front of you to remind you of interesting points that you learned from the website. I cannot overemphasize how important it is to show that you've thought about the company that you want the job at. Know everything you can know about it and show it. Don't just go in prepared to answer questions. Go in prepared to broadcast your knowledge of the company. So, you know, I have a sheet of bullets that I'm looking at right now to remind myself of where to go with all of you folks. Have something in front of you that you can look down and refer to so that you remember not to forget to talk about the company. Speaking of distractions, remember to cite some information you've learned from the pull down menu. A few more things before I end up. Know your audience. Ask some of those specific questions that would occur to you from having looked at the website. Ask specific questions about the person that you're interviewing so that you make sure it's a dialogue. It's not just him or her asking you questions, it's a back and forth. And in your questions, make sure you broadcast clearly that you've studied up the company as much as you can. Be prepared for lazy softball questions. The most common lazy softball question you'll ever hear is, so tell me something about yourself. That's just an interviewer who doesn't feel like working. That's just an interviewer who says, I'm gonna project the problem onto you and you're gonna do the talking. Have some answer for, so tell me something about yourself. Very hard question to answer, right? You can all imagine right now. So tell me something about yourself. Where do you start? What do you do? That's a classic recipe for and a panic, right? I wouldn't know how to answer it. So in your notes, have a story about yourself, have an apt anecdote of some sort, have something that you can riff into if you're given one of those weird, lazy softball questions. And the other thing that you should be prepared for, some of those cliched questions. They're usually lazy, sometimes they're weird, they're always annoying. So why do you want to work here? Another one, pick your greatest personal attributes and describe it to me. Sometimes it's framed as, what do you like about yourself? The weird ones that you will get are things like, you know, what's the biggest negative about your personality? I remember interviewing for a job in '93, and the guy asked, "What's the one thing about yourself you would not want me to know?" Those kinds of weird questions are annoying, and there is a line that they cross where it becomes inappropriate, but that's one you can go with. If you have prepared yourself, and this is all about preparation, if you've prepared yourself for some of these weirder things, like tell me something that you don't want to tell me, or tell me something negative about yourself, having a good pat answer to those kinds of things is always helpful. Another big one, tell me how you handle personal mistakes and give me an example. They want to see whether you pass the Saturday morning test, which is an employer's way of saying, is Morrell the kind of guy I'd like to work with on a Saturday morning? So they'll ask you questions to show that you're a decent, fun, affable, sort of caring person who knows how to be humble and knows how to suppress his ego. Some of those weirder questions are designed to see if you pass the Saturday morning test, and that you're they'd want to look at when they get drawn into work on a Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Anticipating those kinds of odd questions and preparing for them helps you be ready for an answer to them. That is the end of my segment on preparation. I hope I was prepared enough to do a decent job for everybody. I will come back at the end and talk about follow-up and what to do after the interview, but having covered preparation, I pass the baton back to Craig.
Thank you, Matt. I really appreciate it. I really think it's really insightful to hear, just about the preparation. It seems, it's too often that people don't understand. They just send a resume out to all of these different companies in the hopes of somebody will give them the opportunity, but giving some thoughtful preparation in terms of understanding the culture by looking at their website, doing their due diligence on research, understanding whom is going to interview them, things like that they can pull in will just help better prepare them and frame themselves to go forward. So thank you so much. That was great. So transitioning over, Opal, Morrell, one of the emerging themes we saw in the questions were how to build one network and how to market yourself to get noticed in a positive light. So we defer to you. We welcome to learn about some best practices and some insights on how to do that.
Great, Morrell, if it's okay with you, I can get started and I'll let you go after. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Mr. Karsten, and everyone else on here. I'm so grateful to everyone at Molloy and the Stanner Alumni Network. I am so proud to be a Stanner, so happy to join here. I cannot tell you enough how important it is to market yourself online. Pre-pandemic, but especially now, after this call, I want everyone to Google themselves and see what comes up. For me, I know what I have put out there on social media. I know my Twitter is public, and because it is verified, I come with more responsibility of what I am putting out. I know my Instagram is public. I'm on Facebook. I have articles that I've written that are out there, but everyone should Google themselves so they know exactly what's out there for you and what you have put out. It is incredibly important. When people reach out to me, the first thing I do is Google them, and I look to see what I see online about them, because a resume only shows you so much. I want to see how you represent yourself, because that's how you'll be representing the company or the organization you work for, and that is in added responsibility and pressure. So, and if you are not on LinkedIn, which I'm hoping everyone on this call is, it is incredibly important to have a LinkedIn. And I was just talking to a friend the other day too. When you LinkedIn randomly someone and just send them a request, let them know why you are requesting them and what is the connection you have. I think the advantage of being a Stanner and having this network, if there's someone on this call that wants to connect with me and I see that they're a Stanner, I love, love, love connecting with Stanners. I'm doing an interview with another Stanner that graduated last year for her class. And for someone else, I may say I may not have the time, but once I see it's a Stanner, I say 100%. So please be sure to, when you're reaching out to people, let them know what connections you have. When it comes to social media, be really careful of what people may have posted about you. It is incredibly important, especially with this time. Look through your Facebook feeds, look through your Instagrams, because I'm someone, if I'm thinking about someone, I will look at like a job or an internship with our team. I will look to see what people have posted about them. Yes, you may not have put it out, but a friend could have tagged you in a picture and all I see is you guys partying somewhere. That is not someone who I want representing me or my team or my boss. So a couple of quick tricks, right? When you have your LinkedIn, put your recent employers up top, make sure your alma maters are there, undergrad, grad school, high school, and basically what's on your resume should be on your LinkedIn, but you have the ability to add more. I'm a big person, you know, a resume should ideally be 1 page unless you've been working for over 20 years and are able to expand. On your LinkedIn, you can, you know, fill out all of the bullet points as you want. For your social media, right, it is incredibly important, your bio of what you wanted to say about you. For me, it says, you know, my job, you know, some scholarships I've gotten and what I want to be affiliated with. And I think that is incredibly important because it's the first thing that pops up about you. And then once again, just making sure when you're reaching out to someone, please make it concise, make it efficient, but also what is the connection there? Once again, if you're a Stanner, please say you're a Stanner, right? If you are just someone who is cold, you know, reaching out to someone, make sure it's efficient and worth their time. Why should they respond to you instead of responding to someone else? I see resumes, I hear from, you know, young people, especially all the time, and they love mentoring advice, but I can't tell you how many times I'll Google someone and I'll see something I don't want to see. And it is incredibly, incredibly important, especially with COVID and especially with the pandemic. People have, you know, are on these Zoom calls incredibly often. And that's the first thing they're going to look up is what's online because I'm not seeing you in person, right? Instead of asking for someone for coffee, it's asking them to do this Zoom call and making sure it's efficient and worth their time. You know, I'm not here for a 2-hour Zoom call. I want to make sure this is worth my time. And exactly when you're meeting with someone else, why should they meet with you? Why is this beneficial to them? So those are kind of ways and best practices of, I think, marketing yourselves online, but also how to network and how to stay connected via social media, via Zoom especially. And one big thing which I've seen that's made a huge difference, after you do this Zoom call, do a follow-up email, right? I can't say adamantly, what are 3 things you've taken from the Zoom call you've done? And send a follow-up email. But what will go the extra way is a handwritten thank you note. Right now with the pandemic, you know, people really love the little things. So after you send that email, send a note, put it in the mail, and I cannot tell you that will make you stand out compared to someone else you may be competing with for the position. So those are a couple of things on my end, and I'll pass it over to Morrell.
Thanks, Opal. That's a great coverage. I was taking notes the whole time. I'll use some of that advice as well too. Talk about following up after the Zoom call. And thank you, Opal. I think that's a great segment. I think a lot of things that you shared are really important. I think the one thing that you covered is the digital footprint as well, and that's something that me and Mr. Katinas and the rest of the group were talking about in the follow-up leading up today too. And I think, you know, there's a lot of things that you could, one, think about in a professional sense, but also this related to your, you know, personal lives as well. Like when someone follows you on LinkedIn, you're not going to follow, LinkedIn, Instagram rather. You're going to check to see who their friends are, or who else follows them, who's following them, just their general interest of what they're doing. When you look at someone's Instagram profile, you'll probably see who they follow. That's an example of like their interests, their hobbies, and even probably their ambitions as well. So that's a good place to start as well. So, you know, if you're not have your LinkedIn really built together yet, just kind of ease into it. Say, how do I want someone to look on my Instagram, and also switch that over to your LinkedIn as far as more of your professional career as well too. So just wanted to open up with that. In regards to networking, I've had a lot of personal experiences with my networking. Something that I've always kind of looked for is that people who not only are interested in as far as getting something out of me, but also people who are just interested in like overall good people and helping people out and helping society at the end of the day as well. Because at the end of the day, it's really hard to find someone who is authentically for you, but also looking to bring you forward in their career. And I think you want to align yourself with people who are really about that. So when the rubber hits the road, you're able to reach out to them and say, hey, I had this tough experience. Would you be able to please meet for coffee with me, hop on a Zoom call, and stuff like that? If someone's really just trying to latch onto your career, then you probably get ghosted at some point as well. You'll feel really empty. You'll feel lost. So that's something that I would caution all of you all as you enter your careers to really look for as well. And I think the Stanner community has a lot of amazing people who are not only just looking at your resume points and saying, hey, I want this person next to me to help me out, but also it's like, hey, this person really worked hard in school. This person took the initiative to reach out to me via LinkedIn or attended a Zoom call that was conducted for a virtual event. And let me just see how they could move forward in their career as well. And then also talking about Matthew in regards saying that someone you want to hang out with on a Saturday morning, and I hope that was a cosign that I'm one of those people as well too, is that you really just want to understand that to be your authentic self, think about your goals before you go network with somebody. Because when someone asks you tell me about yourself, if you don't know where you're going, how is someone going to help you move forward in your career as well? So really think about where you were, as far as I think most of you, that actually, like Mr. Karsten said, it's 50 decades across as well too. So let's say I'll connect to my most recent college experience. When I graduated, I didn't know what I really wanted to do. I played sports throughout my high school and college career. I did a bunch of clubs on campus, both high school and college. So I was all over the place. But what I really understood is that I wanted to, one, make myself proud, work hard and take initiatives to, one, make use of my degree, but also as something, find my purpose as well too. And that's something I think is kind of romanticizing. I think, people want to say, oh, I want to be a doctor. I want to help people. And that will honestly take time. But if you look for people who are authentically there for you, and you'll find that out through conversations. And I think something that I will also tell you all to do is really listen. As well. So while you're in that Zoom call, while you're in that coffee chat, while you're talking to one-on-one that person, are they looking all over the place when they're talking to you? Are they making eye contact with you? Are they really listening to what you're saying as well? And not saying that you'll hold everybody's attention right away, but if you're telling someone your life story and they're looking all over the place, maybe that some person may not be the right fit for you. But also, every opportunity is a learning opportunity at the end of the day. Maybe think about, what did I say that didn't initially catch that person's conversation? Did I set up the meeting the right way? Did I really set up the purpose? When I started talking about myself, were they shocked about the things I said? Or were they really in tune to what I was listening as well too? So I think something that overall with networking, marketing, and your job search and this in life, I would honestly say, take a moment and listen. I think some people get caught up in talking, and then that's great. But even when you talk, see how somebody reacts to what you're saying as well. And that will help you, progress in your career, but also your personal life too. Yeah, thanks.
That's great, Morrell and Opal. Thank you so much. And just to share with you, our LinkedIn group for Molloy has over 2,000 Stanners there. So if you aren't on there, you should. Because as we all know as Stanners, the platform of peer groups, likes on likes. And Opal, you resonated so perfectly with that. It's great that, when you're interested with things, you can reach out to people and you can get a stimulating conversation about that. Morrell, I think it was absolutely critical for you to point out that it's not enough to just introduce yourself for the opportunity for growth. Like, wow, that person can help me. But you need to keep your network stimulated and vibrant. You have to be the one that does the engagement. You can't expect it to be both ways with regards to that, because the opportunities will present themselves down the road if you keep your network active. And it's part of your professional job, right? To keep yourself active in that vibrancy, because you never know what's going to happen 5, 10, 15 years down the road of someone that you've introduced yourself to and things like that. To your point, Morrell, by not keeping that engagement, whether you're on a different track or not, that person has a different perspective of you. You're only going to reach out to them because you want something and you need something from them, as opposed to being more collaborative. So I really appreciate both of you about framing it. And just to share with you, President Karsten and I could share with you chapter and verse about many experiences where alums that are recent graduates that are pursuing opportunities for internships, where they'll send us their resume. We'll send it along to the Stanner community. And to your point, Opal, that digital footprint can make or break the impression. So if I could kind of almost do like a circle, Matt, the observation you brought about the individual doing the research, so too the company will do research on you if they're really interested in you. And they're going to drop down all the menus that come up about Matthew McLaughlin, Morrell Gaskins, so that could be an enhancer or not, because a picture does say 1,000 words. So it's really critical about that as well. So I really thank you both for framing some key points there for us. So now I'd like to transition over to Jason McGann. Jason, we've learned about the best practices to prepare, to network and market yourself. Now that we have the interview, can you provide some perspectives on how to navigate the meeting and really avoid some of those common traps that you've seen?
Sure, Craig, thanks. And it's an honor to be here. It's a tough act to follow. Morrell, Opal, Matt, you guys did a great job, dropped a lot of wisdom. The one thing I've noticed over the last 245 days of being home and doing a lot of Zoom calls and Microsoft Team Meets and WebExes is just how impersonal, cold, and distracting the medium can be. And I think whether it was Morrell or Opal or Matt that were talking about trying to establish a personal connection, it can be very, very difficult. Everyone you're interviewing with is going to be in a different situation. Some folks are going to be at home with children running through the house. Some folks are going to be back in the office already. Everybody has a different setup. Most of us who are working from home have either went out and bought extra monitors, and now we're starting to develop a monitor bank either in a corner of our apartment or in a room in our house, or we're back in the office. And if you're interviewing at a financial services firm, who knows, the person you're interviewing with may have 6 monitors. I've noticed that it's very hard for people to stay plugged in and focused, because you may have Outlook open on one screen and you're getting email. You may be keeping up with election news if you were interviewing with somebody last week, or market news. Again, if you're interviewing with somebody in the financial services world. So I think it's very difficult to establish that connection. I think it's important to start just by remembering nobody's an expert at this. Nobody's been doing this for that long that they're an expert at Zoom interviewing or going on Zoom interviews. And I think it's helpful to have a little icebreaker at the beginning and just level set a little bit and put some dissonance in the interviewer's mind and say, crazy times we live in, we're here doing a Zoom interview. I'm putting away my phone. It's very hard not to get distracted, but I've turned all my notifications off. I'm 100% here and focused on this. I think that almost creates a little bit of guilt in the interviewer, that they start to think, gee, maybe I better do the same thing and put the phone in a drawer and turn off my other monitors. It is a lot different than doing it in when you're actually going to an organization or employer's office, where you're in a conference room or you're in somebody's office and the distractions are gone. Nobody should be distracted, but I've noticed over the last couple of months that it's really, really difficult. And I think having that icebreaker, it allows you to establish that human personal connection. And it's not just a flat screen talking to me, it's a person. There's Morrell on the other side of the interview, or it's Opal. There's sort of people that are there. I also think you can't get discouraged when people start to slip away, because I think I've even noticed myself doing it when it's folks that ask me to have networking sessions, or I'm in an important meeting. It's just, you're constantly seeing things flash at the periphery. Your phone is going off, and it's kind of a big challenge to stay focused and 100% on something. And I think you have to be able to, as the interview's going on, sort of pull that person back in. And I think sometimes just little things like remembering the name of the interviewer when you see them drifting away, say, hey, Craig, you asked a really good question, and I really want to make sure I answer it. Just so you change the inflection in your voice a little bit, you use their name, it sort of snaps them out of, oh man, I got 30 emails while I was talking to this person, and I have so much to do after this interview. It sort of brings them back to that human interpersonal connection. I think if you can get through that, what I've seen, and this sort of circles back a little bit to what Matt was talking about, I've interviewed a lot of folks, and there are just some things that over the years, it creates a lot of cognitive dissonance, and it's some of the pitfalls that I think are, you have to sort of get through. And we talked in our prep call about interviewing being a skill. And I love the fact that Cobra Kai is back, and it introduced a whole new generation to the battle between Daniel LaRusso and Johnny Lawrence. But whether it was watching Cobra Kai or the original movie, in Miyagi-Do karate, the first rule of Miyagi-Do karate is to play defense. The second rule is to go back and read the first rule. In interviewing, the first rule is preparation. The second rule is go back and read the first rule. A well-prepared candidate after the initial question and answer session should have questions prepared. They should have thought about the role, the person that's interviewing, what the company is doing. You have to demonstrate the intellectual curiosity to say, you know, you asked me what I want to be in 5 years. The person you're hiring, where's that person? Where do you think that person should be in 5 years? Where's this company going to be in 5 years? What are your biggest challenges? What are your biggest strengths? How do you go about your daily work here? It shows that you've got the emotional maturity to have thought about your career, thought about next steps, thought about how this role fits into what you want. And this is something that on our prep call, Morrell talked about a lot. It's all about having a conversation in a real human conversation to make sure there's a mutual fit. And if nobody asks questions of me, it's sort of really difficult for me to really understand, does this person really care about this job? Do they really want it? What do they think about their career? It's something that I think it tends to fall flat if you have an hour scheduled for an interview and you talk to somebody about their resume for 40 minutes and say, you have any questions for me? And they say, oh, no thanks, I'm good. This is really interesting. Have a good day. It sort of really falls flat. So I think that's really, really important that you do that homework and have some things prepared. I also think, and Matt touched on it, whether it's young folks that, I happen to be in the financial field, and that they would have done something on campus in finance, either taken a class or participated in, lots of schools have stock picking contests and investment contests. And you kind of read down the resume and you say, wow, this is really interesting. You participated in this contest. You had this internship. What did you learn from it? What stock did you buy? How did you sort of do the analytical work to get from point A to point B? And you sort of see people freeze. And they kind of say, oh man, this person's asking about something on my resume. I didn't really think this through. This wasn't a job. This wasn't a class. It was something in between. What do I do? If you've got a portfolio, if you've got a resume, you have to be able to talk about all the elements of it. It's sort of, you're going down. I don't necessarily always think that people are embellishing. I just think they're not really well prepared. They never really thought, this is a class I took. This is a contest I entered. This is something I designed. They never really thought somebody was gonna ask them about it. As you do preparation and mock interviews with a relative, a friend, you should have them go down the resume, some of the interests and the hobbies at the bottom, and even be ready to talk about those and how it fits into who you are and your personality. I think that is really, really important. I also think not hearing from an interview candidate, Opal touched it on this, is particularly important, whether it's a handwritten note, an email, just to say, you know, hey, that was a really good session we had. I'm still interested. I think what you guys have going on there is really interesting. I can see myself fitting in there. Please let me know if you have any questions or I can do anything else. That goes a really, really long way, especially today where communication between Twitter, Facebook, Instagram is so disposable and so quick. Getting a customized handwritten letter or getting a customized email tailored to the conversation, it really goes a long way and really demonstrates that you have an interest and a desire of working with the person.
Jason, I think one of the other things that we talked about was almost framing the interview itself, that even though you're the one being interviewed, you can also frame the opportunity like what we talked about, is saying, hey, just to let you know, I'm turning off my phone, I'm turning off this. So it sets the tone for the interviewee to understand how sincere you are about it. And it also activates the interviewer, the interviewee, like to say, you know what, they're bringing their A game. And as Matt said, I'm not going to be lazy and give them that layup softball question. They came with their A game, I'm ready to bring mine.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Everybody's time is valuable, whether you're an interviewee or an interviewer. Everybody's time is valuable, and they should give you 100% undivided attention. I've just seen when rubber meets the road in the real world in this new medium, sometimes that's really, really difficult. But I think you're right. That sort of frames the conversation that I'm here, I'm valuable, you're here, you're there, you're valuable, and I'm making the dedication to be 100% present. Yeah,
I can agree with you more. And I just really appreciate how you're framing those things, that the little things mean a lot in your interview, in meaning specifically your resume. You know, a lot of those individuals, whether they have a robust amount of experience or they're just trying to start out their career, there's a reason for something to be on your resume that pulled you to get to the point to get an interview. And that's what they're going to be trying to pull on with it. So to your point, it could be you were really successful on doing the stock pick program at your college at Adelphi or things like that. You know, that's the interesting thing. Take me through your thinking process to this. Take me through this. Why did you do that? All of those things. It may not be the 2 or 3 page resume that you have, but it's that one specific thing. And as Matt said, the more you're prepared to how to properly frame the answers to those questions, the more engaged you're going to be as the interviewer.
So,
I take that as a yes. So transitioning over to the last but not least is, now we're going to close it. So Jason, thank you so much. Matt, we're coming back to you. We're prepared. We networked. We marketed. We interviewed the job, but it's been a few days and no responses. So what do we do next?
So follow up. You prepare and you end with the follow, the alpha to the omega. I'll come back to no response in a second, but let me start with. So Opal did a very nice job of saying that the icing on the cake, the best thing you can do is a handwritten note. She's right about that. That's full polish. Let me flip that over. The absolute minimum that you must do is this: within 24 hours, you have to send an email, at least an email, or some kind of electronic message to everybody that you met with. Everybody that you met with. Now, ideally, as Opal said, it should be on paper, but if time doesn't allow or resources don't allow, it doesn't have to be on paper. But within 24 hours, you should at least send a thank you note to everybody you met with. This is your chance to restate your interest in working in the company. It's your last chance to resell the package that is you. It's your last opportunity to reinforce why they should hire you over the next man or woman that followed you in the interview process. It's a great opportunity to write to the person that you met with and talk about the bonding experience you had. If you folks talked about a book or a movie or some kind of shared recollection, travel, whatever it is, go back to that person and say, hey, Craig, it was great talking to you about the Mets. Too bad about the Jets against the Pats last night. Something that will make that person remember you in a positive Saturday morning way. Is this a guy I want to work with on Saturday morning? Well, heck yeah. He came back to me 8 hours later and he showed respect to me by reciting what we had talked about. Follow-up is a must. Now, to Craig's question, if they don't follow up with you, what do you do? My son, Patrick, is looking for a job, and he interviewed a week ago, and it's been more than a week. And he said, what do I do? So we sat down and typed out an email together. We waited about week, 7 to 8 days, and said something along the lines of, dear Mr. Katinas, it was great speaking with you 7 days ago. I enjoyed our conversation about. I remain as eager as I was before the interview. I'm equally eager now after the interview at getting a position at, Acme Corporation. I haven't heard from you. I look forward to hearing from you. Some kind of nudge, some kind of twist their arm a little bit if they've forgotten. The question, one of the questions that will come is, how long do you wait? Again, it's a judgment call. It really is a specific call to the company. Not longer than a week, obviously. The next day or 2 or 3 is probably a bit pushy, and you might come across as overly aggressive. I'd wait, and many would disagree with me on this, but I'd wait 3 or 4 days before I go back. Everything that's been said has been extremely helpful, and I took some notes myself. It's hard for me to improve on what's thus far been said, but I'll note, and I know that Craig's going to shift us into a Q&A session, but I want to just touch on a couple of things that were hit on and reinforce a few points and twist them 15 or so degrees. Rob asks, is it wrong to look at notes? No, absolutely not. There's nothing wrong with your eyes darting down like mine are right now. I'm looking not at the camera, but I'm kind of looking at the screen at all your faces. And then once in a while, I look down at my notes, which are in front of me, to remind me of where not to forget and where I want to go next. So no, nothing wrong with looking down. Would it be totally inappropriate to go like this and text your buddy? Yeah, that would be, to Jason's point, that'd be openly disrespectful, and good luck getting a job there. Somebody else, Jason, did a nice job of talking about engagement and hanging on to somebody. I want to make a point that I should have made in the technical preparation side. And Craig, I'm going to use Craig as a reference point. To Jason's point, hanging on to someone's engagement, I think it's really important to look at you the way I'm looking at you right now. Face about this size in the screen, about this big, about as big as Jason and Morrell and Opal are. This is fine. What you don't want to do is be profiled like this. And Craig, I can't find you now, but Craig is looking at us in profile. He's super busy because he's running the call and he's probably looking at texts and stuff. When you're interviewing, don't show profile, look straight on, because to Jason's point, it really holds the engagement. Your coach would say eyes on me, or you say to your kids, eyes on me. Jason looking at me straight on, or John Coaster looking straight on, whoever I'm looking at. Maurice Herrera, never to forget Maurice, everyone looking directly at me. That's direct engagement. That helps hang on to the interviewer as a matter of positioning. So that's my follow-up, literally my follow-up, and I sort of echoed a few points, and I'll kick it back to Craig, who I think might want to do a few Q&As with our remaining minutes.
Well, Matt, first, the side profile was really more just to hide my face as much as possible for the general populace. And part 2 is my camera. That's how my camera is positioned. But to your point, let's just say that I can't do that. You frame it with the interviewers, like, apologies, my camera's like this, blah, blah, blah. You set the tone with what you have.
Right.
And if you do that, people respect that tremendously. So in terms of all of that, before we do an open Q&A session with this, first, I just really want to thank Opal, Morrell, Jason, Matthew, so much for your time. This was absolutely tremendous. Just to let everybody know, we've been very gracious with their time, because they're also putting together a document for us as a follow-up to this event with do's and don'ts. So please know that in the next couple of days, 2 things are going to happen. All of you that participated, you'll be receiving a PDF from all of our panelists with the do's and don'ts that we just covered, and probably some areas that we maybe missed out on touching on. But it's really important just to let you know, don't panic. If you didn't catch the notes fast enough, we got the notes for you. We're going to send it out there. So with that, if there's any questions, please let's hear them, because if you don't, Jason McGann will be very disappointed, just like in any interview. Or were we that great? I think we were that great. Should we just give the thumbs up on that? One of the questions I could tell you right now that I would defer to the panelists, we talked about jobs, but also I think what's really important is we've seen a lot of young alumni that are really trying to get internship opportunities. and these are the same best practices as well to apply with that. But how do you guide a young alum that is really doesn't have the pedigree, didn't get the training, if you will? Like you said, it's interviewing is an art, right? It's interviewing is a skill. How do they go through to get themselves prepared for that? Because let's be honest, it's a big difference between applying for an associate opportunity at Matt, your law firm, versus that first job at Carvel. It's a different interview process. Can you work these hours? Can you do this? Can you do math? Versus to those points. So how would you recommend some of the action steps that our younger alumni should consider doing when they're trying to apply for those internships?
I can take this one. I think I have a couple of interns, in our current office, and I love when I get intern recommendations. But for me, I was fortunate to have a lot of internships, but in my industry, I didn't know anyone. So I had to really work myself up from, the bottom to the top. So I can't emphasize the importance of internships. I think especially when you're younger, all companies need interns, right? Like, I value my interns. I don't know what I'd do without my interns. So take it and make it seem like this company needs you. Why are you going to be beneficial to them, right? And if you don't have any experience, right, while you're in high school, that's when I got my first internship while I was at Molloy. I was really actively involved. So you may not have, 5 jobs on your resume, but what are the activities did you do in school? What were their leadership activities did you do? And that's what I love being told and love when I see on a resume. You may not have had a job, but you were actively involved. You held leadership positions. And then finding that actual internship, use your network. I cannot emphasize that enough. Even before I graduated high school, I had a LinkedIn, and I put stuff up there, and I was in different groups, and I reached out. And don't be shy to reach out. I have to commend Michael, who, while I was on this, I already got a LinkedIn recommendation message saying not only a fellow Stanner, but also a fellow setter. Sorry for calling him out. I'm so impressed by that, right? As soon as I talk about LinkedIn, he already messaged me. So please, get involved young. And I say, find out what you're passionate about and what your skill set is. And that is how you'll be successful in your career. And network, build your online presence and reach out to people, because people want to help you. I cannot tell you how much I love our interns and how much I recommend them for law school, how I help them get other jobs, because they're an asset to me. So that's kind of what I'd say.
Yeah, I would say on that, one of the things that going back, I'm going to date myself, over 20 years ago, most colleges have the ability to do a mock interview with a person in your profession. And it doesn't matter what profession it is, but it's someone who works in the industry you're looking to get into, and they usually come to campus. And I think now it's actually even easier because we have this medium that you can come into anybody's house at any time. I think that's a good way to start to build the interviewing skill, because usually it's a connection to make in the industry, and also folks they don't really know you all that well, so they can give you sort of real good criticism, as opposed to sometimes you may have a friend that may say, oh man, that was really great. But if you're interviewing with somebody who's from the industry and has some experience, they can give you some good practical pointers and say, you could do this a little better, you could do that a little better, tone this down, emphasize that. And I think that's really helpful. And I also think I found that in my career, through affinity organizations like this, like colleges, most people are more than willing to help. If you track somebody down from LinkedIn and say, hey, I went to Molloy, I went to where you went to college, I studied for the CFA. Most people say, look, I can spare a half hour because this person might be interesting there. They're doing the homework, they're aggressive, this is well thought out. I can spend a half hour, 45 minutes for a cup of coffee or something like that.
Great. I just want to lead
Sorry,
it.
Craig, can I add one more thing to that? And I think what everyone has said on this call is this: don't be afraid to put in the work. I think that's the biggest thing that you can take away from this. You will obviously, so you will succeed after a while, but just remember that don't be afraid to put yourself out there smartly, and learn from your experiences as well. And then this, like Opal said, if you're really active at Molloy or if in your college campuses, don't be afraid to, check in on your peers to see what they're doing as well. You don't have to, actively reach out to them or get active in the group chats, but just say, hey, I was around these group of people for X amount of years. We had a general same interest, and then let me see what they're doing, and that will help me figure out what I'm doing, and then I can take that information and use it for myself. So don't be afraid to put in the work, everybody. I think that's the biggest thing. And you all took that step here tonight too. You registered and you logged in at a Tuesday night. So that's cool.
Yeah, great. We had one more question that came in on the chat lines that I think is pretty interesting. And we'll wrap it up with this one. We started out talking about the internships on the Q&A, but the other one that we're hearing is, how do we fight this perception of being overqualified for the interview, for the position that you're applying for?
That's a tough one. Again, it's a judgment call on how you handle that. One way to approach the issue is to explain that I'm in a life change. You don't want to say slowing down, because that doesn't send the right message. But you might want to say, I operated. You have to do this delicately. You got to figure out a more clever way to say it than I'm about to recite to you unprepared. But you might want to explain, I was going at this level and I decided that my life didn't feel right. So I want to step it down a notch or two. Now you want to make sure you say that in a way that doesn't insult the guy you're talking to, because it might sound like I'm taking your crummy job when I could have gotten a better job. But as a way to answer Rob's question, as a way to explain why, with all these qualifications and more degrees than you need to get this job, you're still applying for this job, you sort of say it's part of a life cycle adjustment.
I've seen this once or twice, Matt, and I saw somebody do it really successfully, and I thought it was interesting, where somebody told a person that they were overqualified, and he said, I'm overqualified for your organization the way it sits today. I'm the person you need to take it from, 30 miles an hour to 120.
Wow.
And I see such an opportunity here that I'm interested in this position, because I could take what's here and build on it and make it something really, really fantastic. And you're right, you have to be delicate, because the person that's doing the interviewing could sit there and say, this guy is essentially telling me that I'm not doing my job really good, and I could do a much better job than he or she is. But he was able to successfully spin it and get into an opportunity where he said, look, this is no risk, right? You can pay me what you think you want to, but I can sort of really ramp this thing up, and it'll be really interesting for you. And I think there's a path we can walk together. And it actually worked out for this particular person.
Jason, something that we talked about in the warm-up and Morrell brought out too when we had this discussion was, sometimes it may not be the right fit for you. And so, when I've seen that happen, the successful transition to that question has been, quite frankly, as I've evolved, so too is my priorities and how I want to use my talents. And this is why I looked at this opportunity at this company to really invest the talents and really activate it to its fullest extent. And I think I can get it here. This is where I feel I would be the best fit. And I think that's where this is the opportunity that comes in. Very much what you were talking about, Morrell, that maybe you don't want to work for a company that's all suit and ties when you look on their website. Maybe that isn't your style and your comfort level. But when you find a place that fits the character of who you are, that's also a nice segue into it as well, to say, I really feel, to match your point, you did the research on the company and everything else, to say to them, quite frankly, I did my homework and this is the place I want to be. I feel that my talents will be absolutely utilized to its full extent as it hasn't before. And this is a great opportunity for all of us to collaborate together. So again, some food for thoughts. What I would ask everybody to do is that we can ask a lot more questions, but we want to respect everybody's time. What I would ask you to do is please, we want to keep this dialogue going. We're going to post the Q&A do's and don'ts, and we want to transition this dialogue over to LinkedIn. So tomorrow morning, look out for a post from me on the LinkedIn group from Molloy, and we're going to continue that dialogue. And we hope that all of you that are on the call, our panelists, can really stimulate the conversations about a lot more finite questions and the nuances that we can help each other with. So with that, I want to thank you all for participating. Thank you again to all our panelists. I hope everybody's home safe, and those that are traveling, get home safe. I wish you all the best. Take care.